So when people say that you are what you eat, they could not be more right. I mean, you are literally driving Alzheimer's, you're driving diabetes, you're driving any kind of inflammatory disease based upon what you put in your body.
Health, fitness, mindset, nutrition. Live better and longer. I'm Saad Alam, and let's hone in.
So I think there's more and more realization and more research going on how the gut, different bacteria, different metabolites of gut bacteria. So you get prebiotics, which feed the probiotics, which are the gut bacteria, and those probiotics make postbiotics, which are the metabolites of the bacteria. So those postbiotics can be pro-inflammatory, can be anti-inflammatory. So what the bacteria make, these metabolites, these postbiotics, they're made by the probiotics, are very important to the rest of the body. And especially if you have the leaky gut, because if you have a leaky gut, those postbiotics and those metabolites are not staying in the gut where they should be, but they're leaking through and getting into the bloodstream. To a certain extent, you are what you eat, but you also are what your bacteria eat and what they excrete. So, for instance, it may not be as simple as you are what you eat, but to a certain extent it's right. I see a lot of it, in particular young women, but young men too, who had a lot of antibiotics as kids. When you get given a lot of antibiotics, my generation of doctors overprescribed antibiotics. Every time you went to a doctor with a cold or whatever, you got antibiotics. Those antibiotics kill whatever bacteria are sensitive to that antibiotic, many of which are the good bacteria that are protecting your lining, keeping your gut working well. When that happens and they're killing the good bacteria, you get an overgrowth of yeast or bad bacteria. Those bad bacteria are going to then metabolize the food that comes in. So if you've got an overgrowth of, everyone knows about SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. You also get small intestinal fungal overgrowth. When you have that problem because of bacteria or because of antibiotics, overuse of antibiotics, or even too many PPIs, proton pump inhibitors. But when you have this imbalance, even if you eat a healthy diet, you can have problems. So it's not as simple as you are what you eat. You are what you eat, but you also are what your gut bacteria are eating. So if you have an overgrowth of these bad yeast or bacteria, sometimes a good diet can still be a problem. So because you've got to get rid of the bad bacteria or the bad yeast before you can actually solve the problem. So yes, it's, to a certain extent you are what you eat, but it's a little bit more complicated because a lot of it has to do with the microbiome and the flora in your gut.
So you realize that you just scared the hell out of me because I eat so healthy, but you're saying, Saad, you could have a leaky gut right now.
Well, it's important to eat really healthy, but here's a perfect example. If you have an overgrowth of yeast, fermented foods, and even some probiotics that you take could be a problem. So as a general rule, fermented foods are good for your gut. But if you have an overgrowth of yeast, that could be a problem. That's why, as you know, I've just been doing this for so long. As a clinician, you get wary of people who have generic rules for what's the best diet, what's the best this. Everyone's a little bit different, and you really need to adjust things according to one's need. Now, that's the beauty of measuring things. You can sort of, and that's why I'm so intrigued by all these wearables now, because, I have a CGM on at the moment. Certain foods will spike my blood sugar, but won't spike my wife's blood sugar. Same food. So the beauty of what's happening in medicine today is you can actually measure a lot of these things and see how you respond to food. And that's why I'm sure you've worn a CGM and you've seen how different people respond to different foods. So I think, yes, you are what you eat, but what you eat is not necessarily the right, or the same diet's not necessarily right for everyone.